everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sophie Behrman. I'm the host of the podcast Life in 7 Songs and the director of audio at the San Francisco Standard. This is a very special evening for us. This is our first ever live taping of the show, and thank you. Thank you. We are so glad to be doing it here at Aspen, so thank you guys so much. A little bit of housekeeping. Since this is a live taping, I need to get an audio level on all of you, so please put your hands together for the staff here at Aspen. Woo! Okay. Okay, good. You can make some noise, which is good. You'll see why in a little bit. So on our show, we ask our guests one key question. If you could tell the story of your life in 7 meaningful songs, what would they be? I could see some of you already thinking about that list. And the minute our guests put together their playlists and start talking about it, the memories just flood out. Because music, it has this way of transporting us, right, through space and time. And all of a sudden, you close your eyes and you're back in 12 years old, crushing on someone and, playing a song on repeat, or watching your first child get born and singing them lullabies at night. It just takes you right back, and that makes this show very, very special. One other thing, we're going to play snippets of the songs, of the 7 songs, so please, if you know the music, sing along, right? Dance, sway, anything. We're going to be doing that on stage, and we're not singers, so any help you can, provide would be great. Our guest this evening is the extraordinary journalist, Louise Kelly. Yes. You all clearly know her voice from NPR's flagship news program, All Things Considered, where she has guided us truly through some of the most complicated news stories, let's just say that, of our lives. And I mean overseas, in war zones, breaking down those stories, and then back in DC, navigating the crazy halls of power and everything going on there. So we are very grateful for that work. She's also the author of a memoir called It Goes So Fast. You've read it. Which is about doing all of that, which is a lot, while also making space to be present for the moments that matter most at home, in her case with her 2 boys. She keeps it very real in the memoir. I know she's going to keep it very real on stage with us tonight. It takes a kind of bravery to talk about what you were listening to in high school, right? And certainly to confess your love of the 80s pop singer Debbie Gibson. So please join me in welcoming Louise Kelly to the stage. Aww.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a wild card that I've just thrown at you. This is not one of your 7 songs.
This is not one of my 7 songs.
But that was Debbie Gibson, Only in My Dreams. And you write about this song in your memoir. You share both a very personal story, and we're going to get personal tonight, but also a very funny story from this song. So I thought, let's just start with Debbie Gibson.
Because why not?
Right.
Because here we are. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you all. I was just saying the counter-programming Friday night at 6:30 is immense, so thank you. I will also say, if you had told me that all of my life had been pointing me toward a moment when I would bop up onto a stage in the summer of 2025 to a Debbie Gibson song, I would have wondered what major plot twist in that life I had missed, but here we are. The story behind the Debbie Gibson song is the following, that I am deaf, or very close to it. I have severe to profound hearing loss in both ears. I don't know how many years it took me to figure that out. I thought my hearing was normal and that everyone mumbled all the time and that no one could hear the words to pop songs. I know that sounds strange. But when I was diagnosed, finally, about a dozen years ago, I had just turned 40. And to get hearing aids and suddenly be able to hear your footsteps walking upstairs, which I had missed for years, but also to be able to hear that pop songs have words, which I had kind of forgotten, because I could hear the music, I could dance, I could hear the beat, but I had just, at some point along the way, forgotten that they were saying something. And so right after I got hearing aids, I was home one morning and I was just puttering about, and I put on an 80s dance mix. And Debbie Gibson came on, and I was like, this is great. I forgot how great this was. So I was...
Lyrical genius.
I posted on Facebook something to that effect. Debbie Gibson, genius ahead of her time, like, fight me on this. I beg you to disagree. And so, of course, the comments came flooding in, fighting me on this, and one of them gave the inevitable comment, you need to get your hearing checked. And I thought, oh, honey, we're there.
Thank you for indulging me. So, okay, we'll go to your first real song.
Okay.
This is Zip-a-Dee-Doo-Dah. This is a 1946 Disney song that came out for the movie Song of the South. So why did you choose this one?
This speaks to one of my earliest memories. So I grew up in Georgia, and my first house that I really remember, we moved to when I was 4. And it had high ceilings and sun that came in very strong from the front of the house, and so big, heavy curtains. And the morning ritual when I was 4, 5, 6 years old was my mom would come into my bedroom and open the curtains, and that meant it was time to wake up and get dressed for school or camp or breakfast or whatever it was. And she was always singing. She always sang this song, and my mother has a beautiful voice, much nicer than anything you're about to hear from me. And I have such strong memories of her walking in and saying, "Good morning, sunshine," and then breaking into Zippity-Doo-Dah. And it stays with me because I can see the way the sun was coming in. I can remember what that was like to wake up as a child and feel safe. What stays with me is my mother was and is a good and kind person, and she, I'm sure, was a grown-up dealing with all of the problems that grown-ups are dealing with in any given day, but all she projected to me was how happy she was to see me in the morning. Aww. And it stayed with me. It's a gift to give to someone. If you believe from early childhood the people you live with are good and kind, it builds a trust that maybe everyone else will be too, because why not? That's what you've known. And it has informed the way that I move through the world. I walk into a room like this, and my assumption is people are going to be good and kind, because that's what I grew up with. Not all of you. I'm sure some of you are reprobates, but what a gift to give a child.
That is such a gift. Let's take a listen to it.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay.
My, oh my, such a wonderful day. With sunshine coming my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay.
I love the birds that come in.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you
for sharing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, in reading your memoir, it sounds like your mom has played an outsized role in your life, your whole life. But when you became a mother, that relationship even changed, right? She sort of became more important in some ways to guiding you through that. Can you speak to that?
I don't think you know what's involved with what your own mother did until maybe you have that experience yourself and realize, as I say, all of the things she must have been grappling with that I never knew. I mean, I remember one relatively recent moment when my boys were in high school, and my mom would come up when I couldn't, if I had to travel last minute for work, because breaking news is, by definition, you don't know what's going to happen, and I would call my mom, and she'd say, "I'll be there by lunch," and stay with the boys. She understood things that mattered to me as a mother that I don't know that anybody who didn't love me the way a mother could. There was a soccer game of one of my sons, my oldest son, and it was a big one. It was like for the state championship, and I had missed so many of his games because I was always getting on a plane somewhere, and I made that one, mostly because it was a Sunday afternoon, so I was not on air. But I called my mother afterward. They won, by the way. Go Bulldogs. It was a great game to be there for. My son scored. It was perfect, and I got to be there. And it meant so much to me. So I called my mom from the car home and told her, you know, they won, and James scored, and she was so happy for him and for the team. But her first words were, oh, sunshine, which is what she calls me when she's happy. I'm so happy for you. You made it. You got to be there. And then she asked about James's skull. She understood.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you. So your second song, we're going back in time now. It's your teenage years. You chose Aerosmith's "Sweet Emotion." So tell us, tell us the story behind this song.
Okay, so I need you to picture 1988.
Okay.
I am 16 years old, so we're in 87, 88. And my high school besties, there were, we all have many friends. I just literally walking in here was texting one of the women I'm about to tell you about, Teresa, who's asking if she can come stay with me on an incredibly inconvenient weekend coming up, and the answer is, of course. Teresa and Beth were my high school besties, and we all got our licenses sophomore, junior year, and what I'm remembering specifically when I hear this song is turning 16. This is suburban Atlanta. You cannot get around then or now without a car. There was no bus. There was no subway. There was no way. So it was, you had been utterly reliant up to then, age 16, on your parents driving you somewhere and convincing your parents that, yes, you really did need to go to the mall and go to the movie theater and all the rest. We got our licenses. And I remember the first moment of the three of us peeling out of my driveway, and there's no parent at the wheel, and we're looking around like, really? And this is before cell phones, so they couldn't track us. They didn't know where we were going. We were just out, and this song came on. And is there a sweeter freedom than that, than being 16 years old and rolling out with your high school best friends, and you don't know where you're going to go, but it's going to be great.
It's going to be good. All right, let's take a listen.
Oh, y'all know this. Come on. Come on.
Oh, yeah, there we go in the front.
It holds up.
It does.
It's
Although,
still good.
when I listen to this, I really think about rebellion, right? Like, what kind of trouble were you getting up to?
I mean, I was grounded quite a few times. I was a good, sweet girl. But there just was, like, you could only see so many movies at the mall before it was time to branch out and have a little bit of trouble. So we cruised. The other element that you have to have in your mind, Teresa's car, this is the car that we were bopping to Aerosmith in, was a Volkswagen Beetle convertible, and it was ancient by the late 80s. This was one of the original ones. It was bright yellow. It was as cool as that sounds, except it did not work, including the ignition, which you could only turn the car on if the car was already in motion, i.e. rolling down a hill, which presented its challenges. So my specific memory of this song is my sweet father being told this, and we lived on a cul-de-sac like on the edge of Atlanta, and the exit from the cul-de-sac was down a hill before you hit the main road. So you had a finite amount of time for the car to catch before you were out into the main road with brakes, but no other way to get out of the way. And my dad pushing the bumper behind this car, and Teresa was good at, she would time it and hit the ignition, and we were off.
Oh, man, things have changed, huh?
Well, I don't know. She's probably still got that car now, Teresa. It's probably going to be in my garage when she comes to visit.
Okay, so that's like the first taste of freedom, and then you have more freedom. You go to college, you go to Harvard, you write for the student paper there, and afterwards you do more journalism. You land your first big gig, I should say, at the BBC.
My first gig was for my hometown paper. I started in print and worked at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and then I went to grad school because I wanted to be a foreign correspondent.
Okay.
I wanted to see the world, and the BBC, what better place
amazing.
to do it. Yeah.
And that brought you to London. And you chose a song for this, too, Oasis's Champagne Supernova, which I love.
Yeah.
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 So where was this playing on that whole trip there?
So I moved to London in the late 90s, and I was in my 20s. I did have, the first real job that felt like This isn't a stepping stone for now. This is like exactly where I want to be. And late 90s, cast your mind back, Tony Blair had just been elected. John Major was out of office. The Tories were out of office for the first time in forever. David Beckham was everywhere. The England team was great. He started dating Posh Spice, so it was the music scene was huge. It was the Spice Girls, it was Blur, it was Oasis. That was the soundtrack for me to those years. And I think that feeling of being overseas in a job that I was so excited to do, so young, no kids. I was renting a place, no mortgage. I was excited about everything that being a grown-up meant. I had 8 matching dinner plates and forks and wine glasses. I could throw a dinner party and you could all come, and I had plates. That felt so grown-up and exciting. I remember registering for the National Health Service and to pay taxes, and that felt fun because you have to have an income, which means you have to have a job to pay taxes. So how fun is that? It was great. That wore off pretty quickly. But it was the feeling, again, of still just everything was still to come. Everything was out there, and everything felt like it could all happen. No doors had closed yet. I mean, I was probably not going to be an astronaut at that point or a ballerina. Those doors might have closed, but everything was still to come. I was young, I was invincible, and this song speaks to that. We all felt that. I think the whole country in that moment, the Cool Britannia moment, was real.
Let's listen to Champagne Supernova.
Slowly walking down the hall.
You guys know this one.
Where were you when we were getting high? Someday you will find me up beneath the landslide.
In a champagne.
I don't know about you, but it makes me feel very old that they reunited and were touring again.
Oh, yeah.
This year. And it was like everybody
Was
there
like,
was
yes!
like, Oasis, here we are. Yeah.
When you were a kid, did you think you'd become a journalist? Did that seem like a possibility?
Oh, yeah. I started a newspaper on the cul-de-sac with the hill down to the main road that was called Lemon's Ridge, was because the farmer who'd lived there before was Farmer Lemon, before it became a cul-de-sac of little, houses in suburban Atlanta. And I founded the Lemon's Ridge Bugle in about 4th or 5th grade.
Wow.
And we profiled neighbors moving in and neighbors moving out, and had a Yard of the Month competition where if you won, you got a flamingo about that color planted in your front yard, which you were absolutely not allowed to move for the full duration of your month-long glory, whether it was blocking your prized azalea or not. So yeah, I think I knew I wanted to do that, and then I edited my high school paper, and that's where it really, I like to write and I like to tell stories, so this made sense. And plus I could not play sports then or now, so something had to be done in the extracurricular period where everyone else was running track or playing basketball. I ran the paper. But I remember a moment, I went to a school that had uniforms. They were not negotiable, they were pretty strict, and this was the late 80s, so we're all wearing, Madonna and Cyndi Lauper bangles and earrings that came to our waists. And they changed the dress code and said your earring could not hang longer than if you pulled it up, it couldn't come past the top of your ear. Like, how cruel and arbitrary is that? It was such an injustice, and I felt it because I had all these rubber hoops that I wanted to wear. So anyway, I decided to do a story about it, and I had to go interview our assistant principal, who was also the guy you got sent to if you got detention, and I was terrified of him. And as I say, was a good girl and had never had to go see him before. But I went, and I asked him all these questions, and we ran a story about it, and then people wrote a lot of letters to the editor in support for the next edition, and they changed the policy.
Okay.
And thank you. It was the first moment where I was shy and kind of scared, and I was scared to ask him questions, and I realized he's not taking my questions. Like, he doesn't care that Mary Louise doesn't like the earring policy, but he will take questions from the Levitt Lina type. And it was the first feeling of I can ask questions on behalf of someone else. I can correct a travesty of justice in this school. Like, we can do this. And the newspaper gave me an outlet to do something I would never have been able to do. And I felt that deeply. And I mean, I'm laughing. It's funny. But I feel that still when I'm doing hard interviews today about hard things. You know, there is no head of state or cabinet secretary who has to take my questions, Mary Louise Kelly, but they'll take them because of the millions of people who will hear the answers on NPR. It gives us a platform to ask questions that I would never otherwise be able to ask, and that has stuck with me and still feels really powerful today.
When you do hard interviews about hard things, how do you incorporate your mom's advice about walking into a room and assuming a sea of kindness? How do you bring that into an interview?
Okay, so that's sometimes a challenge, depending on who you're interviewing. But I assume you can ask really hard questions about really uncomfortable things if both interviewer and interviewee operate from a baseline of mutual respect. I am asking questions which are, I hope, fair, that I have researched. I'm not trying to ask a gotcha question. I'm sometimes giving you an opportunity to explain something controversial or answer your critics. And if you don't answer it, I'm going to push you and keep asking it. But I've interviewed people about allegations of, awful crimes, child abuse, et cetera. I've interviewed people about policies that have gone spectacularly wrong. And if you ask it in a respectful way and then actually listen to what they say, you can get a lot done.
So from the BBC, you moved to NPR, and a couple years after that, you become a parent. To this day, your website introduces you as, and I'm reading here because this order matters, a mother, a daughter, a journalist, and a novelist. Again, mother, daughter, journalist, novelist, in that order. So because it lists that, and because your memoir is about that tension between work and being a parent, is there a moment early on where you really felt those two worlds were at war?
So many, and you're reminding me, I was thinking, was it just a couple of years after I came to NPR that I became a mother? It was. My first job at NPR, I really wanted the diplomatic correspondent job. I didn't know they'd already offered it to Michelle Kellerman, and she was moving back from Russia to take it, and that I was the consolation prize. And they said, if you will come and edit All Things Considered for a couple of years, we will give you any reporting job you want. And they were true to that, and I've kind of made my way from there. But when I was first pregnant, you're reminding me of, even before I became a mom, this was becoming challenging to do my work and be pregnant. I remember showing up at the White House for an interview with Condoleezza Rice when she was National Security Advisor. And I was so pregnant at that point that I couldn't wear shoes.
Oh, no.
Not just my shoes, but any shoes. Like size 11 men's flip-flops would not go onto my feet. I was literally hobbling into the White House, and she was so nice. And I put my feet up, and we did the interview, and it was just like, okay, you make it work. Anyway, was there a moment when it came to conflict? I mean, so many times. But I will tell you one of the more dramatic ones, which is when I had graduated from editing All Things Considered, which is a great job, by the way. You don't graduate from it. It's like a job you would kill for. It's just not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be out in the world reporting. I had weaseled my way into being Pentagon correspondent, and part of that job was covering the Pentagon in Washington, and part of it was traveling with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or the Secretary of Defense when they traveled. And on one particular trip, because the SecDef had gone to Baghdad, I was part of the press corps on the plane covering where he went and what arms deals were being discussed and what was being promised to American allies and adversaries. And we flew into Baghdad, and this is the war was in full gear. You could not drive an American cabinet secretary through the streets, even with a very secure convoy. So they were moving him around in helicopters, which meant the press corps trailing him was also moving around in helicopters. So I remember we we'd come up from southern Iraq. We had a thing at a base near Basra, and we landed in the green zone, but even within the green zone, there was incoming fire. Not at that time, but often enough that they had us all in body armor. And the way they do these things then, at least, is he gets to go first, being the Secretary of Defense. So his Black Hawk lands, and they get him off the plane. He's in the Black Hawk, and he's up for whatever meetings. And then the next Black Hawk lands, and it's like the generals and admirals traveling with him. And then they work their way down as the reporters. We're the sitting ducks, waiting for the last chopper. So as we're waiting, my cell phone rang. And it was the school nurse back in Washington. And she wanted to tell me that my 4-year-old was sick. And where was I, and how quickly could I get there? And I think I probably laughed. I think I was like, lady, if you could see me. Like, I'm literally pushing my helmet back to take this call. So I started trying to explain, and then she started yelling, and she said, I don't mean to come get him to bring him home. I mean, he's really sick. He's struggling to breathe. We need to get him to a doctor or a hospital now. Where are you? And I was trying to do the time zone calculation and figure out where his father was or where the nanny was, and I lost the line. Cell phone connection in Iraq. And then the Black Hawk landed, and I had to get in it. They're not waiting for you. And I remember being up in the air and looking down, and I could just see the traffic of Baghdad, and I was crying, and I didn't know if my son was okay, and thinking, what am I doing? I love this job, and I worked really hard to get this job, and I'm good at this job. And I don't know if my son is breathing, and I'm however many thousand miles away. What am I doing? My son is fine. He's now 19. His father was there and got him to the doctor, and all was well. But it took about 4 hours for me to get a cell phone connection back and find that out. And I remember that night lying in a triple bunk bed in a trailer behind one of Saddam Hussein's abandoned palaces, as one does.
That's only a sentence, really, you could say.
Having made my deadline and filed for All Things Considered and the newscasts and digital and all of the rest, and lying there and thinking, I think it might be time for career plan B. This is not working. And I stepped away for a few years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is a good transition to your next song. It's that heady moment in your life. You're still at NPR. You're covering these wars. You're involved, covering the hunt for Osama bin Laden. And like you said, you're considering, like, do I need a break? And you said in an email to me that Natasha Bedington's Unwritten came on the radio, and it helped you make that decision.
Yeah.
So tell us that story.
Well, because as you're probably gathering, I love being a journalist, and I really didn't want to step away. And I also, you have a moment like that one in Baghdad, and it clarifies there are some bright lines in life. And I just thought, at this particular moment, somebody else could travel with the defense secretary. They wouldn't file the same story I would. Maybe it would be better. I don't know. But somebody else could get on that plane, but nobody else can be a mom to this boy. My son was 4 at the time. And so I was thinking more and more about it, and the idea of, I'd covered the CIA for years before the Pentagon and was still doing a lot of intelligence work, and I had so many stories that would make their way into my reporter's notebook, but never onto air in a 4-minute deadline piece, and I thought, I wonder if I could do something with that. Like, could I write a spy novel? Maybe I could write, like, that sounds way more fun than grinding away on deadline every night. Could I do it? What would that look like? And I was really wrestling with it. I didn't want to walk away from my job. And I was not remotely sure that I could write a book. And I was not remotely sure that NPR would hold a job for me, as indeed they did not. I managed to talk my way back into one some years later, but they didn't hold a job. And so every day as I was going to my job, doing the reporting, making deadline, writing my stories, thinking, what would this look like to have a very different life, at least for a little while? And I was driving home through DuPont Circle. Anyone who knows Washington knows DuPont Circle at rush hour is to be avoided at all costs, and so you have quite a while to contemplate the state of your life as you're sitting there on DuPont Circle, and Natasha Bedingfield's song "Unwritten" came on the radio, and let's hear it because you'll understand why this is the song that sticks.
Feel the rain on your skin.
No one else can. Yes.
Only you
Can let it in.
No one else can speak the words on your lips. Put yourself in words unspoken. Live your life with arms wide open. Today is where your book begins. The
Rest is still unwritten.
Today is where your book begins, the rest is still unwritten.
Yep.
I mean, you couldn't make it up. I am not a superstitious person. I don't read my horoscope. I don't do tarot cards. I don't do any of this, but I just thought, I'm going to take this as a sign. Today is the day. Your book is still unwritten. Maybe you should go write it.
And did
it
you
was
literally
enough.
like call your boss and say I'm out?
I mean, I'm not going to say I like called her from the DuPont Circle, traffic light, but yeah, it
soon after.
was enough to push me over the edge and focus. Like I had to write something to show it to an agent to like have some kind of plan in place. And I think it was about 7 months after that helicopter ride in Baghdad that I told NPR, I'm done. I'm out.
There are a lot of cool things about you, but I don't want to gloss over the fact that you write spy fiction. Like, that is very cool. What are these books?
So that first book was a spy thriller called Anonymous Sources. I took to heart that you should write what you know, and so the protagonist is a reporter who is out there trying to break stories in Washington. Where on earth did I get that idea? I named her Alexandra James. My sons are Alexander and James. Alexander's the one I got a phone call about in Iraq. I like the names, obviously. It's what I name my children, but I also wanted to have in my head, this is why you're doing it. Like when you don't feel like sitting down and writing the chapter, this is why you're doing it. Show up for Alexander James. I did. And then it's, my instincts are a reporter. So I wanted to figure out, I had this whole nuclear terrorism plot unfolding. I am happy to report that I do not have firsthand knowledge of being a nuclear terrorist, but there are, people out there who study these things. So I did a lot of reporting, and I really cared about getting the details right. So in a way, I was able to carry on what would this look like? Where would they go? How would it unfold? What's plausible? I wanted it to be a fun read, but I wanted it to ring true, and I had some of my old sources at the CIA read it, and they would make little cuts, including people who had never taken my call, or if they did, they'd been like, no comment. I'm like, I asked you what's for lunch. No comment. Can neither confirm nor deny. Click. They would call back, if it's, I need your help making this fictional scene realistic, they were happy to talk. And a couple of them, once they saw I got those details right in the book, when I returned to covering the intelligence beat, years later, took my call.
They came around. There you go. Tip for all journalists.
Yeah.
Write a couple spy novels.
Keep working your sources. It may take a decade, but it will pay off.
So you chose another song from this time when you were away from journalism, and this takes us to 2013. So you're writing spy fiction. You're living in Italy. Where in Italy?
Florence.
Oh, amazing. So you're living in Florence with your husband and boys, and the next song that comes out literally takes over YouTube. I'm not kidding. This song has over 1 billion views on
And I
YouTube.
really hope no one knows the words to this. I certainly do not.
I actually didn't know this song, and I'm really upset that I do now.
You didn't recognize it when you heard it?
And it's perpetually stuck in my head. So it's called What Does the Fox Say? Okay. By Elvis. And it's just really catchy. You will hear in the sense that once you hear it, it will not leave your head.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for, but it's okay. So why did you choose this?
Why did I choose this? So we're in the chapter of my life where I've stepped away from NPR. I'm on deadline with my second book. So I had a publisher, I had an actual deadline from Simon & Schuster. I actually had to write something. I was working, but it didn't matter where I was. And the boys were young enough that we kind of thought, well, maybe we should have an adventure. And so we pulled them out of school and put them in international school. We chose Florence over somewhere else because why not? Like, you know, why not? But also the international school would take them just temporarily. It was every bit as phenomenal as it sounds to pack up your life and move to Italy. It was incredibly useful from a book writing view to just remove myself from all of the daily things you need to do when you're home, because I wasn't home. It was wonderful. So I want to say with gratitude how wonderful it was, and it was also utterly exhausting and overwhelming. I did not speak Italian. I spoke French, which is more useful than not, but not really helpful when you're in a country where people speak Italian. I also was, I think, fairly far along in losing my hearing, and I didn't know it. So I was like, I know I need to work on my Italian, but this is ridiculous. I can't communicate with anyone. And if any of you have had the experience of living in a foreign country, it's wonderful. You're learning everything. It's an adventure that maybe you chose, and yet the most minute things, you don't know how to do them. You're reduced to being a child. Like, I couldn't figure out... I remember the day it nearly ended me, Sophie. I needed coffee, and we were out of coffee filters. And I couldn't figure out how the hell you buy a coffee filter in Italy. You could see all the coffee. It was on the shelf. There's no coffee filter. And I remember asking the woman at our local grocery store, and she looked at me like I was asking for, you know, fairy alien dust or something, and no idea. I finally learned, should you ever find yourselves in Italy in need of a coffee filter, they sell them at the tobacco store. That's also where you buy bus tickets. That was another whole day's odyssey to figure that out. The reason it was explained to me is it goes back to World War II. I've not fact-checked this, don't quote me, but I was told it goes back to World War II when certain items were being rationed, sugar, coffee, and so the tobaccoria, which is kind of a neighborhood gathering place anyway, had scales for the tobacco, and so they could weigh your rationed items and give your coffee, and they had the coffee filters, and so that's still how it works. How are you supposed to know that? Also, I think Italians aren't using Mr. Coffee and coffee filters. They're making nice espresso. That was another thing that was lost on me. But I say all that by way of saying that was a whole day of my life, Sophie. It's like driving around crying and needing the coffee filters. Every day was magical and wonderful in its way, but I would come back and you still had to cook dinner. There was no Uber Eats. Maybe there is now, but there was not at the time. So it was like cooking dinner every night for, at the time, 2nd and 4th grade boys who would come in ravenous from soccer practice, and I would be so just overwhelmed. And they would come in and put this song on. And I would soon be laughing so hard that I'd forgotten the coffee filters and everything else. Well, let's hear it, and then I will.
What does the fox say?
Cow goes moo, frog goes crow, and the elephant goes toot. Ducks say quack, and fish go blub, and the seal goes ow, ow, ow. But there's one sound that no one knows.
What does the fox say?
This is the point my boys are like breakdancing and they're doing sprockets moves, and I am just falling over laughing.
And what does the fox say?
We have no idea. And I think it changes every verse.
Oh, yeah, it changes. Ding,
It
ding,
keeps
ding,
changing.
ling, ling.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, go look up that video, and you will thank us or hate us either way. Just
I
do
had
it.
to look up when I chose the song. I had no idea who sang it, and I still don't know how to pronounce it.
Ylvis.
Ylvis?
Ylvis.
They're Norwegian.
Yeah.
That's all I can tell you.
That's all I
Great
know.
song. If you're ever in a bad mood, put it in. You will laugh.
Join the billions.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I don't think I told you this, but I lived in Italy for a year when I was a kid.
didn't?
So I was sort of on the other side. I was young enough to learn the language. And my dad, like, oh my God, did he suffer. Now he proudly says that he speaks vegetable, you know, pomodoro. Like he could go to the market and like do that, and that is it.
You in Italian school?
I was
Okay.
in an international school,
Right.
sort of like
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
boys. Yeah, in Genoa. So
Although my boys' real school was they joined the local football soccer club. They're good then now at soccer, and the coach spoke no English, and then nobody else spoke any English. And so I think they learned extremely foul,
only the
unrepeatable Italian, but that was where they picked it up.
my mom came to visit. I was living with my dad in Italy, and you know we were proud that we knew the language. And we took her out to dinner. She tried to order dessert, dolce, but she asked for una doccia, which is a shower. Anyway, we didn't correct her. We thought it was so funny just to let her kind of
I love it.
die there. So,
Been there. Yep.
so you go back to NPR. Can you bridge why you decide to go back and stop writing spy fiction?
I never stopped missing it. I think I was away for 6 years, give or take. And I would occasionally come back and fill in, host Morning Edition or All Things Considered. But didn't have a beat, wasn't there regularly, was home and writing. And I mean, I can remember the year that led up to the Edward Snowden story broke. That would have been my beat. I would have owned that story. And I remember being at a book event for the publication of anonymous sources, the Alexander James book, my very first book event ever. And I was locking myself in the bathroom to scroll Twitter to see, like, Edward Snowden was in the airport in Moscow, and was he going to be allowed out and given asylum, or was he going to fly to Brazil? And I was just tracking it. And I remember, I guess it was sometime in 2015, it must have been, the terror attacks in Paris, which were awful. People died. But as mentioned, I speak French. I can report in France, and I have done so many times, and I had covered counterterrorism in Europe in the wake of 9/11, and I just felt this incredible, put me in, coach. I want to be on that plane. And the boys by that point were, I don't know, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that range, and they were healthy, and they were fine, and they seemed to be thriving, and I thought, I wonder if I could go back. And I had kept calling my sources. Lesson to all the journalists in here: keep calling your sources, even if you think you're out of the game. Keep calling them. So I had a Rolodex of people at Langley and at the National Security Agency and on the National Security Council who would take my calls, and that's gold in our business. It's hard won. And I made the case for could I come back, and so I started back at NPR. Back on the national security beat in January of 2016, which I thought was going to be a really quiet news year. Especially on the national security beat, because we had a presidential election, and usually the focus is all domestic, and it's the economy, stupid, and everybody's focused on the New Hampshire primary. I thought that's where the focus would be, and I would be able to just ease back into this, and then the Russia story broke, and there's never been a quiet news cycle since Donald Trump came down that golden escalator, and here we are. It was not an easy transition back in.
But you did it, and you're happy you did.
I did it. I thought it was going to be fine. I remember, if anybody's ever taken a spell off work and then gone back, you get everything ready. So everybody had their hair cut. Everybody had a current dental appointment. The freezer was stocked with meals. The house was spotless. Everything was done. And the first month, 2 months, 3 months, I was like, I got this. I can totally work a demanding beat and hold it all together. And then suddenly, it was time to go to the dentist again, and there was no food, and the car needed servicing. I'm like, how does this work? How did I used to do this? But you make it work.
You make it work.
You make it work.
So your next song, you're back at NPR, but at home, your marriage is starting to strain. And I'll just pause there. What was happening?
I will, out of respect for the privacy of my family, I will just say that after many long and happy years, we decided it was time to move to a new chapter, and that my ex has moved to a new chapter, and I wish him much joy. And he was and remains in my life, and a friend, and a wonderful father to my kids. But it was definitely a new chapter, and figuring out, okay, life's about to pivot.
Well, and this has a happy ending because the song that you chose has to do with meeting someone new who is here in the audience. Sorry to point you out, but this is Let Your Love Flow by the Bellamy Brothers. So there must be a story here between you two.
There is. I met the man who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with when I was 52. And I would like to say it's every bit as wonderful to meet someone and fall in love at 52. I think in your introduction you said something about remembering when you're 12 and you're crushing on someone, and we all remember that. It's just as great when you're 52.
Aww.
Who knew? Like, you get a flutter when they walk in the room. So he's here tonight, and he changed his flight so he could be here tonight, and just landed from Denver moments ago. I will also say that if you have lived a rich, full, big life, that you don't make it to your 50s without some scar tissue. And in my case, I think I was probably scared about the risk of opening my heart again. I didn't need any more heartbreak in my life. And there were moments where I thought maybe I should just go join a convent. That might be the best decision for all parties. So we were working our way through that, and he came to pick me up one night in his car, and we were driving, and we were having a date, which is wonderful. And he put his hand on my knee, and we're just driving. And the Bellamy Brothers came on.
Let Your Love Flow.
Let that feeling grab you deep inside and send you reeling where your love can hide, and then go stealing
So sweet.
through the moonlit nights with your lover. Just let
Let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love go. That song came on. Thank you, Yacht Rock Satellite Sirius Station, which is what you listen to when you go on a date in the 50s. And it just suddenly felt easy. I felt lightness, and I hadn't felt that for a long time. And I mean that in the simplest, happiest way. I just felt lightness and thought, I wonder if it can actually just be easy. It can be this easy and feel like I'm with the right person in the right place.
Aw.
And I was.
How did you guys meet? I have to ask.
There's a music cue to this, which is not one of my 7 songs. So we were at college together many moons ago. We were not in the same year. I'm a year older. We have many friends in common, and he remembers me. I don't remember you. I was busy. Fast forward 30 years, and we have both lived big lives in different cities and done what we came to do with work. And I was not looking to meet someone, nor was he. And a mutual friend who we had both gone to college with saw that Duran Duran was having a reunion tour and coming to DC. And she thought, this is fun. Like, I'm going to get a bunch of friends together. We're going to make a night. And so she booked a suite at the Capital One Arena for Duran Duran. And I was wearing, I hadn't thought this all comes full circle. We were supposed to be dressed like for a Duran Duran concert in the 80s, so I'm wearing giant neon lightning bolts that would have been
Amazing.
totally outlawed by my high school principal, and I would have
Bigger
needed
than
to
your ears.
revolt. But I was dressed like a Duran Duran groupie, and he liked me anyway, and we started talking, and we haven't stopped.
I'm very sad we do not have this song teed up, but it'll be in the show notes.
Yes.
That's so. Tips for dating in your 50s then?
Oh my God. Oh my God. The nice thing, and this is it's different from dating in your 20s, is it's like, this is who I am. This is what we're dealing with. It's not going to get any skinnier or less wrinkled. It's not, the crow's feet are not going away. So you seem to like me. Let's just have fun. It's a very come as you are experience. I think that's my best tip. And yacht rock. That's my major tip. Yacht rock.
And what?
Yacht rock.
Oh, of course. Of course. So your very last song is Tracy Chapman's Give Me One Reason. Love Tracy Chapman.
Love Tracy Chapman.
What does it say about you and where you are today?
So I chose Give Me One Reason, but I could have chosen any Tracy Chapman song, all of them. I have them all. I have them in multiple formats because I think I started with CDs and then worked my way through. Like, was it used to buy one song at a time? Like, I remember bringing some old platform before. Now they're on Spotify. Anyway, I've bought them everywhere. You're welcome, Tracy. It occurs to me as we're talking, actually, Sophie, that I think every other song I chose has to do with my relationship with someone else, my showing up for someone else, my mom, my kids, my partner, my friends, driving off in the Volkswagen Beetle. Tracy Chapman is mine. Like, I love her. I've never met her. I get asked sometimes who's my dream interview, and that will go through, depending on who's in the headlines and what's in the news. I could answer that different ways. But I would love to interview her. I never have. And so this song is just for me. And it speaks, I guess, to having a little bit of time, maybe in my 50s, to keep doing a job that I love and be finding new people who give meaning and love to my life, but also, what do I want to do?
What's next?
This book is still unwritten.
Let's listen to Give Me One Reason.
Give me one reason to stay here,
So good.
and I'll turn right back around. Said I don't wanna leave you lonely. You gotta make me change my mind.
Beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
The way she rocks that, that rocks her voice. Yeah, so I think this is the looking ahead song. It's the what comes next. I have no idea.
I was about to say, what is next for you?
I have an idea for another book.
Okay.
I keep trying to write another novel. It keeps feeling very beside the point with everything going on in the world and in our country and in my day job. I was trying to write some this past weekend and then got a call late on Saturday night. Can you do live breaking news coverage? The U.S. has just bombed Iran. And you're like, yes. Why am I making things up when we have more than enough that we can grapple with in real life? So I keep setting it aside and keep trying. I would like to write. I think the next book will come. And then I don't know. I don't know. The boys who I spent so many years wrestling with, how can I be there for their soccer game and also be on the plane to Iraq? Answer is you can't. Like, you can stagger it. You can do one for, a certain period of time. You can do one day and one the next. But they're off at college. They're both off out in the world this summer. So for the first time in 21 years, when the call comes, it's, can you get on the plane? Like, yeah. I could get on the plane. Oh, I don't know. Let's get on the plane. And you, can I share, you are a new mom.
I am. I have
8 months?
8-month-old. Thank you.
And this is your first work trip away
It
from
is. It is.
How's it going?
It's great. You know, you write in your memoir, did I want to go? I'm paraphrasing, yes. Did I want to leave? No, right? That's exactly how I feel. Did I shed some tears? Yes. This is maybe TMI, am I pumping 6 times a day? Which adds up, thank you, to 3 hours a day. That is a lot of time. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
But is it really special to be here? Yeah, it is hard. And actually, I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have? Because you've been through it now, and I know your memoir kind of sums up your advice, but what would you tell me?
I wrestle with it every single time. I wrestled with it every time. I remember back when I was very active on Twitter, I used to tweet constantly all day long. It felt like part of my job. And I remember leaving on a work trip to North Korea, a little different from Aspen. But I was going to be gone for whatever it was, a couple of weeks. My boys were not tiny at that point. This would have been like 2018. But that moment, like the taxi pulls up to the curb and it's going to take you to the airport. And they carried my luggage down for me, and then we're going back inside and arguing over whether to order pizza or burgers, grilled burgers that night. And I felt I remember writing something to the effect of, that moment, no matter how old your kids are, the taxi pulls up to the curb to take you away on a work trip, and you just want to close the door again and go back inside and build a pillow fort. And I feel that every time. I just want to go back inside and build a pillow fort. I don't know what the answer is other than to say that every single one of us who's a parent, and I have to think every single person who's not a parent, we've all had that feeling of, I absolutely need to be in 2 places at the same time, and I absolutely can't. It's the solidarity of knowing none of us figured it out. We are all hanging on by our toenails. Not all of us are getting on a plane to North Korea, but if you're not there, you're not there. And that can feel, as you just put it, it can break your heart, and it can also be exactly where you're supposed to be in the world. And I think you're where you're supposed to be.
Thank you. Mary Louise Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your 7 songs. Thank you. This was amazing. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.